So we are down to our final session of SLIF Almost Live. And we put this one at the end because I don't know if I'm going to make it out alive. I don't think we could put this one at the beginning. But we're going to be talking about a very serious issue, one that Rachel Gutter brought up earlier, which is, we're talking about the pandemic and we're going through different phases of it. But one thing that we know is coming and is already here for a lot of folks is it's a mental health crisis. Burnout, stress, and just adapting our lives to living under this new normal. I said it, didn't want to say it. So we have a panel that we're going to bring together. Jack York from IN2L, Steve Moran, as we all know, from Senior Living Foresight, and Jodi Guffee from Radiant Senior Living is going to be joined by Rex Miller, who's an author and futurist. And we're going to bring Rex on the screen first because Rex has a recent book, or a book that's just coming out right now. It's entitled, and if you could bring it up on the screen, I could say it the right way. The title of the book is Return to Work, A Leader's Guide to Avoiding the Mental Health Crisis. Rex he's written a number of books, especially also books about the health and wellness in the workplace, and has spoken at a number of events for us, Influence Group. Excited to welcome him to the screen now. He's going to share a little bit of insights from the book and his research. And then we're going to bring our group together for a conversation and talk about workplace stress while we taste hot sauces. I know it sounds a little silly, but one of the ways for dealing with stress is laughter. So we're going to not take ourselves too seriously here in a little bit. But first, let's get into the insights from the book. So Rex, how you doing, man? Really like your black light there. It's like, is that you're in a college dorm right now?
Yeah, right. It's the new office to studio makeover project. So I appreciate it.
I gotta get on top of that, man. Looks good. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm going to leave you on the screen here for a minute to talk to the audience about your work and obviously the book that you got coming out, and then we'll come back for a conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So this all started with a book that we wrote on workplace health and well-being, which was called The Healthy Workplace Nudge. What we saw was that there was an unsustainable rise in health cost. And as we got into the research, what we linked it to is that the rise in health cost was directly related to the rise in chronic disease. And then when we linked it even further back with the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic, we saw that stress was the number one driver of the unhealthy behaviors that lead to chronic disease. So chronic disease represents 80% of health costs. It's about, for workplace insurance, an employer will spend about $12,000 a year per employee, and a family will spend about $6,000. But the challenge is it's increasing at a 7% compounded rate, which means in about 10 years, that $12,000 turns to $24,000, and for the family, that $6,000 turns into $12,000. But from a cost to the company and to the economy, that $3.2 trillion represented by chronic disease now doubles. So that was what we called the oh my God factor, the asteroid coming to the planet, the invisible cause and the reason wellness programs don't work. So now fast forward to the pandemic. Now, in times of disruption, current trends tend to accelerate, like work from home. Many companies found, whoa, this actually works. We can make it work. So the same thing happened with stress. It went from being a chronic issue to an acute issue. And we're seeing it every day in the people I coach. And I reached out to one of the researchers in both a school project we did that moved more into mental health, stress, and burnout. And this relates to senior living because teachers are caregivers. And so we found a phenomenon called the caregiver's dilemma. And it's a high burnout rate under normal conditions, up to 50% of teachers burn out in the first 5 years. And then in healthcare and nursing and in senior living, that's an acute problem as well. Now it's only been made worse because of the pandemic. So now we're asking and looking at all of the literature out there that's helping companies prepare for when we return. How are we going to change? How are we going to improve resiliency? And unfortunately, what we found is just nothing out there that dealt with it. We found a lot of extremely good work on how to return physically safe, how to help reduce stress from people feeling like their environment is safe to work in, the protocols, all of that. Nothing addressing mental health. So Dr. Jernigan, the first aha for me was he told me that, Rex, what we've experienced globally and in the United States is nothing short of wartime conditions. Shutting down the economy, sheltering in place, isolation, economic disruption, all of those things. And what he said is because of that, this is creating trauma. And he defined the two levels. One is a level 1 trauma, where someone has a direct experience of major disruption. And trauma is an injury to the brain. It's a mental or emotional injury. Losing a loved one to COVID. I know in New York City, I've got friends who have had loved ones they've lost and didn't get to say goodbye to them. That's traumatizing. Families who have lost income. That's traumatizing. The fear of the unknown. That's traumatizing. A level 2 trauma is chronic issues over an extended period of time. So the first thing he said is we have to look at what we're experiencing through the lens of a mass disaster and the emotional phases and stages people go through. And there are definite stages. There's the kind of the warning stage. If you live on the coast, like my wife grew up on the coast, when a hurricane comes, you have a warning and you go from watch to warning, and then it hits and you just brace yourself for the hit. Then you go through a chaotic period of stabilizing. The next stage is what we call this heroic stage, where all the neighbors and everybody comes out to see if everybody's okay, to cut down trees, to bring groceries. Everyone rises to their best. In the pandemic, we saw that. But the heroic stage is typically a few days to a few weeks, maybe a month. Well, we've been in this extended period for 6 to 8 months now. We're just not designed for that. And so it was during that stage where we started thinking, we're going to be okay. We can work from home. This is actually working. But people are beginning to burn out because we can't sustain heroic efforts. When we begin getting setbacks, and those setbacks include for us in the summer, companies were planning to go back in the fall. Senior living facilities were planning to let families come back in and say hi to their loved ones. Schools were planning to go back, and now, having been fatigued, we go through what's called a honeymoon period. It's like the eye of a hurricane, where we have a brief calm, reset, some hope, and then we hit what's called a disillusionment phase. That's currently where we're entering into. Many are already there, where the setbacks and the lack of having a clear path forward, it's really harming us. And you can see it on people's faces. When I coach, I can see it. And they're just beginning to buckle under the new pressure. It's especially true for caregivers. I just did a workshop with over 200 teachers, and I could see many of them and scrolled through and saw what they looked like, tired. Teachers were sharing with me that it's not even November and they feel like it's May. In other words, we're worn out by May, but now we're worn out because we're doing double duty. Doing things new is stressful, even if it's happy stress, like having a new baby. It's stressful and your routines are thrown out. Working from home or working in a different environment, all your routines, you have to learn everything over again. So now what we're trying to help companies do is, number one, recognize what's happening, recognize everybody is processing it differently, recognizing that we will get through this, but we really have to begin to build resiliency as part of our organizational strategy, part of our management disciplines, as part of the way not only to get through, but to sustain afterwards, whether it's in workplace design or management practices. And the book I created with Dr. Jernigan goes through exactly those things that I walked through. why this needs to be looked at through the lens of a mass disaster, and why this is not just an event. This will be an ongoing process for years to come of recovering emotionally, of recovering and learning how to operate in this new environment. We also discuss how everybody is at one of the 5 stages of grief, and we're not all in the same stage, and we oscillate back and forth. We also cover why managers are the current weak link in an organization's chain, because they're not prepared for the social and emotional skills, the soft skills needed to go from just being task-oriented managers, in other words, directing work, troubleshooting, and holding accountability, into coaches and caregivers in a sense. They're just not prepared. So that's a real weak link and a challenge companies are going to face. Then there's this Zoom fatigue. And the research we did in the last book, Healthy Workplace Nudge, we started tracking stress as if work were a sport. And we've got all kinds of trackers. I've got a Whoop, an Oura Ring, a BioStrap. And what we found is that there's a high correlation between stressful work, knowledge work, like a presentation, and the amount of calories you burn, like an athlete. So for example, when we do Zoom calls, normally in a normal work setting, our brains, which are the largest calorie consumers in the body, are consuming about 30% of your calories. In this environment, in Zoom, it's up to 50%. So if you're feeling stressed at the end of the day or wiped out, here's one explanation. Now, I have people say, why am I not losing weight if I'm burning so many calories? The reason is it's stress calories, and you're not moving or working out. So it builds up in your body, and then it can lead to what we call the unhealthy coping behaviors. So what we've adopted for management is something called post-traumatic growth strategies. These were developed out of the last 2 wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, with the large number of soldiers coming back with PTSD. And Dr. Martin Seligman, also at the University of Pennsylvania, discovered there were 5 key attributes that soldiers coming back stronger and more resilient had that others did not. And we added a 6th, and the 6th is sleep and health. So a lot of work that we're needing to do is going back to the basics and asking the question, what does it mean to be resilient today? What does a resilient organization look like? And then how do we prepare for moving in that direction? So Michael, I'm going to open it up for any questions that you might have or your audience, but I just kind of did a fire hydrant dump of the work we're doing.
Well,
and
there's so much in there. And I guess now I'd like to welcome, our guests as well onto the screen to have a conversation about this, because, it's in all walks of life. It's in personal life. I mean, we feel it as an organization. Of course, we had to cancel all of our events, this year and move to virtual, and it's been very stressful. But we lost everybody. I think we had everybody for a second there. But if we can bring... I guess we'll be having a technical issue. We'll bring them on in just a second. But yeah, you've been the same thing. I mean, you and I know each other because you've spoken at a lot of events. I know a lot of your revenue is generated from being on the road and giving presentation and coaching. And we've all had to, kind of rethink who we are and how we operate. But wow, look at this. Look at this crew we've arranged here. Thankfully, we got Jodi Guffee to join to at least. To bring she's don't say anything there. But
I love it.
There's just a lot for the viewers to take in right now. So for those who are just joining, and again, if you missed the intro, thank you, Rex. You just shared a lot of stuff here that we want to get into, specifically around the mental health crisis. But we're joined by Jack York. Wave your hand, Mr. Jack, in our red sequin coat. Jack is the CEO of IN2L, if you do not know Jack. And next to Jack is another person. If you're in the senior housing business, if you don't know who he is, you're probably in the wrong business. It's Mr. Steve Moran, publisher of Senior Housing Foresight. And we're joined on the bottom right by Jodi Guffee. She is the COO and owners of Radiant Senior Living, based. And this is how Jodi's coping with stress. Jodi with Radiant Senior Living, based in Oregon, and obviously, so we want to have a conversation, specifically as it relates to senior housing. And again, we're doing this a little bit differently because we all need to blow off a little bit of steam. We need to have a little bit of fun, and that's something that's always been a part of SLIF. And it's unfortunate we can't be there in person, but we want to continue this conversation. I think. I want to ask you, Jodi, because you're the operator in this discussion. How, and especially since the outbreak really started in your neck of the woods, how have you been dealing with staff, with your workforce, and keeping them motivated, moving forward?
Oh, that's a really great question. I know we were talking earlier about the fight or flight syndrome, and I think we've been experiencing a lot of that in our industry, where those that are committed are staying in the grind and working through the pain points and loving our residents. And then there's those that are just working out of a spirit of fear, and that's not that anybody's right or wrong. It's just how we're wired. And so some of our team are working out of fear, and they are bolting. It's a challenge, but what we have just tried to tell everybody is that it's okay. However you're feeling, it's the way you're feeling. We're not going to try and make you feel differently. We're going to hug you and hold you through the process. So not trying to be an adversary to people's emotions, I think, is really the key right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing, and I sent to you, is I saw an interview that Steve Moran did with you earlier in the year, a leadership profile. And one of the things that you said in there was, about being vulnerable. I think that as a leader, that's super important, especially now these days, is that, obviously listening is important, but what is your take on that? You mentioned that in the interview with Steve. How vulnerable is Jodi Guffee? Like I said that?
What? No, never. I think being vulnerable allows people to see the human element of what they would consider to be a leader. I want people to see that, and being family owned and operated for so many years, if we weren't vulnerable, we wouldn't be relevant. We wouldn't be real. And a lot of the reason why people come to Radiant Senior Living is because they know that there's no big conglomerate we're hiding behind or under. We are very much raw and in the trenches with them. There's not one position, I don't think, that I haven't filled. And so I'm willing to step in with them and be vulnerable and cry alongside them and celebrate with them. More often celebrate with them. But being able to be vulnerable just shows everybody that we're human. We're right alongside them. We're going through the same pain points. And I'm wondering right now why we're going to have to go back to the stage 1 trauma today when I was already in disillusionment. So what's going on here, Steve and Jack? I blame you.
Well, I'd like to go back to Rex in there, because Rex, just for a second, Rex, the 5 stages of grief. And you said that, everyone's in different stages right now, but can you just summarize again, just to list out those 5 stages?
Yeah, so we use kind of a familiar framework, and it's the Kubler-Ross, where we start with denial, and that's just not accepting reality and ignoring what's going on. And it shows up in lots of ways. But then, coming back from spring break, I was in denial, saying, this is just a virus, it'll blow over. Then I quickly moved into the next stage when 95% of my clients canceled for the year, and thinking they're overreacting. Why is this happening to me? That's the anger. And then the third is trying to buffer and bargain. So I tried to offer discounts, delay events, got busy procrastinating, doing busy work, organizing my office, not dealing with the hard reality that I had to change. And then you go through a period of despair where you just don't, you just think, I'm sunk. This is, I've been here before and I don't know how I'm going to get out. Once you get through that, then there's a stage where you're saying, guess what? I can make it. The worst is over. Or you might say, it's not going back, so I might as well figure out what to do. There's some kind of resolve that happens that gets you forward. The challenge for managers is that all of their people are at a different stage. And if the manager is still stuck, they can't help their people process through. And so everybody has really tuned survival instincts. And if we think the leader is not telling us the truth or is stuck or in a gloomy place, we absorb that vicariously, and then we shut down as well. So it's real tricky. So managers are the first line, and we got to help them process through, make them feel secure, give them the support they need, because they're either the linchpin for the organization or the weak link.
Well, that's some great insight. So I want to now get into something called hot sauce. And the reason why, again, we're doing it, we're talking about stress. And I'm on the Mayo Clinic website right now, so I'm just going to back this up with some evidence-based research. But when it comes to relieving stress, more giggles are just what the doctor ordered, according to the Mayo Clinic. So that's to validate the silliness that we're going to, I guess, participate now in. And before we start talking with Jack and Steve, so we had sent out a little care package to all of you from the Pepper Company. And the Pucker Butt Pepper Company is based in South Carolina, and they created the world's hottest pepper called the Carolina Reaper. So it's not Tabasco or Cholula or the stuff that you can normally get in your supermarket. I believe, at least in the box you had, there should have been a little bit of a warning that these hot sauces are hot. So we're going to continue this conversation, have some questions, but we're going to sample these, and we're going to see how everyone can handle these as we also do some questions. So we're going to start off with the first one here. I think we have a little video to show the audience what it's all about. So the first one is Art Gator. Oh no, it's the Chocolate Reaper. I got it mixed up. The Chocolate Reaper sounds like a nice sweet thing, but it's actually smoked. It's made from the chocolate bootla pepper. So I've got it here on celery and just showing I'm actually tasting it. Don't get carried away. These are hot, and I have milk and water and bread there. But I'm gonna get right into that. And holy crap, that's hot. So, Jack, I want to talk to you. You talk to a lot of different operators and spend a lot of time interacting with life and business folks. Their world has been turned upside down. What are things you're seeing that has inspired you and impressed you?
So glad you're first.
Did you talk to me? Was that a me question?
That was a Jack York question.
So,
wow.
And Jodi always accuses me. Jodi always accuses me of not. What has impressed me, and also it's hard, it's hard to be serious in the middle of all this, but the ability for staff to be able to just compartmentalize these life and death situations, and still keep a good attitude about it. So I mean, it's been tricky for us because when you listen to the author and the stuff people are dealing with, for our company, it's Brian Twell. It's almost been the opposite. We have never had what we do be more relevant than it is right now. The ability to connect people, keep them engaged, and so for us, it's more Sour Patch Kid.
So
Not fair.
Steve,
You're supposed to have my back.
Steve, question for you. I guess I'm trying to think about what the stress can be in your life, and